In Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, you play Lucy, the sister of the title character who has escaped a crazy commune. Tell us about Lucy, your character.
You really never think about it?
No.
You're not angry with me?
I know you don't think much of me, but I knew what I was doing then, and I still do.
No, Martha, I think the world of you. Sometimes I just think I should have come home and made sure you went to college. You had so much potential.
You know, I don't need your guidance now, and I didn't then.
My character, Lucy, is, I think, an incredibly concerned sister who has spent a lot of her life, although you don't really see this on screen, but it's something that Sean Durkin and I and Elizabeth all talked about, which is that I think, and you do see some of this on screen, obviously, I think Lucy is a bit tightly wound and likes things to be a certain way. And when Martha comes back into her life, I think she feels incredibly overwhelmed with guilt and coupled with being excited to have her sister back, and she's trying to have a baby, and so it's a very overwrought time, I think. And then obviously what happens during the course of the movie makes things a lot worse.
Well, over your career, you've had obviously big budget projects and you've had small independent films like this one. What's your favorite thing about doing an independent film?
I think my favorite thing about doing an independent film is that you really get the feeling that the director's vision is the thing that's going to be satisfied in the movie. You know, you're not worried about 50 producers or a big studio that's sort of deciding, you know, what they think the direction of the movie should be. I mean, who knows if we had done this movie at a big studio, whether our ending would be still part of the movie. You know, there's always that question. So I feel like there's a lot more creative control. And I know that can change sometimes when you sell the movie, if you're lucky enough to sell the movie. But with this in particular, Fox Searchlight, the movie is exactly as it was when we screened it at Sundance. So I think that's pretty exciting. But I like to do all movies. I'm not picky.
That's good. Now, this film is pretty creepy, and it gets quite intense at certain points. Obviously, that's the whole point. But a lot of that comes from it being actually really sparse and restrained. And I was just wondering if that was key at all to you and your other cast members in settling into these characters that we're not really sure where they're coming from or who they are, but by the end of it, we're all on the edge of our seat. But I'm not quite sure why. It's all incredibly restrained.
Yeah, and I remember I haven't done that many movies before where a writer-director is interested in stripping away some of this script. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was on the page that was not in the movie, and we would start rehearsing scenes, and Sean would just take chunks of dialogue out because he thought it was just giving too much information. And I think that's really where he's so masterful, because you don't know why you're sitting there like, it's because you keep waiting for something to be revealed and you're not sure if it's going to be, and then something else. It's very tense. I thought he did that so well. I remember thinking from just an acting, sort of narcissistic acting standpoint, I remember a couple times thinking like, but where's my scene where I get to explain to the audience why I'm like this? I want to explain to them why I'm like this, But I think that was all part of Sean's plan, and I think the effect is very powerful because it does keep you leaning forward because you're waiting for everybody to start giving all the information, and when they don't, it just keeps you in this place of tension. So.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of scenes, obviously, with Elizabeth Olsen. What was that chemistry like with her, and what's it like for you, having been in the business a while, working with a newcomer like that?
Basically I just wiped the floor with her, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted to just show her how the hell it's done. No, I sort of feel like I want to be Lizzie Olsen when I grow up. She's the most, I never would have, people kept saying to me, this is her first movie, and she'd actually shot another movie right before, but this was the first movie that she was carrying, and I just looking at her going, what? Your first movie? I learned things from her. Mostly just because when I was her age, I think if I had taken on a part like this, I would have been balled up in the corner thinking about my dead dog, trying to keep my emotional life really full. And Lizzie was just quick. She's got this infectious laugh, and we were singing a lot of show tunes in between takes and dancing around, much to the chagrin of everyone on the set, because she's a singer more than I am, and it was not pretty, let me tell you. But there was such levity and and she's so bright, both intellectually and internally. And so it was really, I don't know, I felt like it was a learning experience for me, which was a little creepy because she's a little younger than I am and newer.
Just a tad.
than I am.
Just a little bit.
Just a tad.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, it's no big deal. There's one thing, there's one specific thing about this film that I want to talk about, because towards the end, there's a particularly physically violent scene, but to me, the more violent scene was the scene towards the end between the sisters where Elizabeth's character pretty much says, you know, your character's not fit to be a mother, and it's so, like, stabbing that it's really stuck with me. And I'm sure you asked about this all the time, but I'm curious as to what your reaction was to that particular scene, and also what other people have said to you about how it really sticks with them.
I remember watching the movie for the first time at Sundance, and there was an audible gasp from the audience when she said that to Lucy. Just the entire auditorium, just it was like a collective, so it was really loud, and I felt very, I have to say, vindicated, because I felt like, good, I'm glad that people have cared enough or connected enough to Lucy and what she's dealing with in terms of, because I feel like in some ways Lucy represents the audience, that she like the audience is sitting there going, what happened to you, but why is she not revealing everything, and feeling caught between, you know, how far you push her and how far you let her just sort of have her time. So I remember watching it with that audience and being very pleased that they were affected the way that they were to make that noise. Because it was such a cruel thing to say, and Lizzie and I had bonded in a way, and she did feel like my little sister, and it did feel like just the most cruel thing she could say to me, which is why she says it, because Martha is feeling so trapped and feels like she's about to be carted away to some loony bin, and so she is trying to hurt me, and she really succeeds, and I just remember being glad in the theater when people had that reaction, because a lot of people have mentioned that scene in particular that they feel was deeply effective and affecting, and so I was happy that was like that for them.
Well, as this film heads off into award season, you've got all these Critics Awards coming up, and Golden Globes and SAGs and Oscars and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to ask you about your Golden Globe experience. You were nominated in 2007 for Studio 60, which was one of my favorite shows of the past decade. You were also in one of my other favorite shows of the past decade, Deadwood. But anyway, Studio 60, what was that night like for you being a nominee at the Golden Globes?
Oh my God. I mean, even when I think about it, I remember the morning I got nominated, and I remember sort of driving around that day and thinking, no matter what, nobody can ever take this away. This will always be part of, you know, my resume or part of my experience as an actress, and that whether I win or not, I mean, of course, you know, it would have been wonderful to win, but it really was that feeling of like, wow, this will be forever true, that I was not nominated for a Golden Globe on a show that I was so proud to be on, and writing by Aaron Sorkin, who I just pinch myself daily that, you know, he even returns an email from me, and that I got to say his lines, and that do you know what I mean? That I feel very blessed to have had that experience. And that night I had a terrible cold. The thing I remember most acutely was being brought to the table and sitting down at this giant table, and there was a bottle of champagne that is the size of my entire body that is on the table, and right away I thought, oh, well, this could be sort of fun. But the woman who brought me to the table, the first thing she said to me was, she was like, here's your table, ma'am, and just so you know, your award is up 5th. And I was like, oh, my award is up 5th. Okay. And I sort of sat down and I thought, oh my God, all of a sudden it became real that, like, I could have to get up there. I probably won't, but I might. I hadn't thought about a speech or anything because I just didn't think I would win. And I started shoving food in my mouth because I thought, well, if I do get up there, I don't want to pass out. And so there was no champagne that was had until after my category was over. And then I remember, I think P. Diddy and Jessica Biel were, P. Diddy, is that what we call him these days? I don't know what he called anymore.
Yeah.
P. Diddy, I remember he said my name in my category, and I just thought it was pretty funny that P. Diddy was like, and Sarah Paulson as a conservative Christian, when I was like, this is weird, this is exciting. So it was I honestly remember a lot about it, which is...
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah. It was your first time, and it's a pretty high profile award, but it's
also a very hard category, I think.
Totally hard.
That category is tough. They only nominate, like, is it 2 actors, or sometimes 3 from TV series and 2 from television? There's
a lot
movies,
of people.
So
it's a big group to pick nominees out of. So that was amazing that you were nominated for that. But but really, you're on to such awesome shows that everyone really seems to love. I'd just love to know just if you've got any particular highlights from working on Deadwood and working on Studio 60.
Deadwood, I mean, everything was sort of a highlight. Mostly any interaction I had with David Milch, who I think is a mad scientist, genius, brilliant man, who my favorite things about that show were you would sort of look at a scene and it was really written in a way that you would kind of have to read it 4 times to really understand what was being said. It had a sort of Shakespearean quality. Those things were inverted sometimes. You were just like, whoa, you had to really, really slow down. And, you know, sometimes you're on a TV show and you go to the trailer to get your hair done and you're learning your lines in the trailer if you've been on a show for a long time. This was not one of those jobs where you could do that. You were like the night before with your glasses and writing everything down and trying to learn all your stuff. But the thing I remember mostly was that David Milch would come in and he would be able to give one tiny piece of information that would just open the entire thing up and you would be like, oh, now I know what to do. But he would always give his direction and his notes lying down on the floor on his side because he has a really bad back. And so it was very cool to like, you know, you just be looking down at David Milch and he'd be like, and you know, he touched his head a lot and be like, I think Mrs. Ringhausen is and you're like, oh, okay. And he's lying on his side it was just sort of bizarre and kind of cool.
Wow.
It's David Milch, but he's lying on the ground giving you some notes.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Pretty
I liked
cool.
it. And Ian McShane, all my stuff was with Ian McShane and Titus Welliver, who are so wonderful. And I had the best time doing that show. Mm-hmm. Really, really the best time. And Aaron
I'm sure from Studio 60 days, if nothing else, as an actress, you've now learned to walk and talk at the same time.
I did learn to walk and talk at the same time, although there was a woman on set whose job it was to correct us if we messed up even the time, you know, because Aaron's words are very purposeful. There's no accidental contraction or lack of contraction in the line. So if you would make a wouldn't, a would not, or a wasn't, was not, there would be someone who would come in and Matthew Perry used to call her the hawk. Her name was Wendy, and he'd be like, caw, caw, because she would come flying in after you've done this giant monologue, and you'd be walking down the hallway, and like, you know, take 5 minutes to shoot this thing, and she'd come up, and she'd just give you this look, and you think, oh shoot, and it would be one word, one like little word, and you have to go back and do the whole thing again, which you were happy to do, because if it's Aaron Sorkin, you know it's written that way for a reason, but sometimes you just be like, wow, this is hard.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you well with the film as it goes into this award season, and just a great job on it, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you.